You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS. Whether it's for food, fuel, drinks, or snacks, about half the U.S. population shops at a convenience store every day. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
Hey everybody, this is John Eichberger with the Fuels Institute and NACS. Welcome to Convenience Matters. I am joined by my co-host.
I'm Chris Blasinsky with NACS.
And today we're going to talk to the founder of the company Filled, a mobile refueling company that is trying to redefine the name convenience by bringing gasoline right to your home or office. And you may wonder why the National Association of Convenience Stores wants to talk to a competitor. Well, it's important to understand the entire makeup of the landscape so you can understand what's going to happen to your business in the future. Hey, Scott, welcome to Convenience Matters. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
We are excited to have this conversation with you. We've been watching the on-demand mobile scheduling, refueling market for quite a while, and you guys have seemed to be taking a pretty good chunk of that business. Wanted to bring you on board and see if we can learn a little bit more about what's going on with Filled. Can you kind of give us a quick Reader's Digest on what Filled is and what you're trying to do?
Yeah, that'd be great. So Filled is a mobile fuel delivery company, and so what we really focus on is the last mile. So trying to bring gas and offer convenience and choice to a customer to be able to have gas delivered to them. For customers who maybe can't go to the gas station, whether it be physical needs or whether it be just time of day or the busyness of life, and trying to bring that to them. So we have a fleet of trucks that are able to deliver fuel on site in most places to a customer. And then we have a smartphone app and website that allow you to place an order, tell us where your car is, and ultimately help us make sure we have the information we need to be able to get on out there. And then just like most of the new apps and mobility apps that you've seen on the market, we bill you directly and then send you an email receipt to wrap that up.
So it seems like you're taking advantage of what a lot of companies are in terms of this whole smartphone revolution, changing how commerce is conducted in almost every corner of the market.
Definitely, yeah. So, pretty much since the iPhone's invent, you've had a trend of the mobile applications, and really it started with, more basic needs, things, like being able to type on a phone and being able to send emails, et cetera. And where it's progressed is really everywhere, right? Into more and more aspects of the consumer or you and I's life. And really looking at all of the different ways that a smartphone might be able to help. As the phone became connected and had Wi-Fi or 3G, 4G, we've been able to leverage that in a lot of different ways. Everything from the Ubers and the Lyfts of the world who, now you can hail a car to wherever you need to be. And in our mind, all the way through to being able to hail a fuel truck to come by and top up your gas tank.
So, Scott, what is your background? Do you have any experience in fueling or retail, or what brought you to this place?
Yeah, no. So my background is purely as a consumer on the fuel side. So my background prior to Filled, I was working at a small boutique venture capital firm. And so we would look at ideas, and one of my roles was really to try to source ideas and look at good startups, companies that might be onto something that we could help partner with them and build that idea and the product and grow it. And so I looked at a lot of different things through that time in the venture capital world and saw a lot of different ideas and to be honest, good ideas, bad ideas, all alike, but created a filter or built a filter that I started to have around what is a customer looking for ultimately. And one of the easiest, the things, if you talk to a lot of the different people in the venture capital industry, that they'll tell you is, ultimately, if it's a product that you get and that you would use, that's a good place to start. Because at the end of the day, you are a consumer. We all are consumers, and we like a service. And so if it's something that you find interesting or you find that you might use relatively frequently, then it's something to dig in on. So when the idea for Filled came about, that was really the lens that I put to it of, is this something I would use? And I talked to a lot of people in the industry I was in, as well as just, general friends, family, et cetera, trying to understand, is there a use case for this? Is there a time or every once in a while where it might make more sense to have gas come to you instead of having to stop? And felt like the customer's perspective on that became clear the more people I talked to. That yeah, there definitely was a use case and a particular need for that type of service.
It's interesting. Before we called you up today, Chris and I were talking. Her and I have been in the convenience fuel retailing industry now, combined 30 plus years, I think. And we kind of we're laughing because we talked to a lot of people say, I want to get in the industry. And the first question out of our mouth is usually, why? This is not an easy industry when you start. Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart. Margins are always tight. The tons of competition, and then you've got all the regulatory burdens on top of it. So when you first thought about, there's a value need here, there's a potential role for consumer benefit, then to take that leap and jump into a pool of gasoline, what did you have to do, and what were your initial thoughts in terms of how you prepared to get into this heavily regulated, heavily competitive, low margin business?
Yeah, no, it's a great point and a great question. I think that ultimately there's when we started the business, and really before we even started the business at Filled, we spent a lot of time trying to understand the industry. As outsiders to the industry, we felt like there's pros and cons to being an outsider to an industry. On the pro side, you don't necessarily have the day-to-day biases that might exist in any industry. And on the con side, you don't know what you don't know. And so there's a lot of things that you might come across that could be a deal breaker or a business killer right out the gate. So we spent a lot of time on the latter, trying to understand the regulatory environment. Really, before we even launched the business, we spent about 6 months researching, talking to different regulators, all the way from federal down to local, trying to understand the business, trying to understand the paradigms in which gas station owners operate within the legal paradigms today, and mobile fuel trucks and jobbers, et cetera, trying to understand ultimately what existed out there. And then we extended that from the regulatory side when we felt like, okay, there is a pathway to do this well, to do this safely and legally, which really was our most important priority. We then said, okay, well, let's try to understand the margins in this business. What does a gas station owner face every day in terms of the challenges of margins and of the cost of the product and getting product delivered, et cetera. So we spent a lot of time researching because ultimately, I'm a big fan of being informed before you take that leap. Once we decided to take that leap, ultimately what we realized was there was a pathway to a viable business here. And yes, the gas station or the gasoline business has tight margins, but ultimately for us, it wasn't necessarily about the tight margins. It was about the potential market that was there. And really every customer, every consumer in North America and the US is going to the gas station on a relatively regular basis every 7 to 10 days, somewhere in that window. And so what we realized is, it doesn't necessarily have to be a great high margin software as a service type business that I might have been used to seeing. If the scale is potentially quite large, and if ultimately the customer experience is a strong one. I've always, one of the adages that I'd heard in the venture capital space is if something can be affordable and cost competitive and can be convenient or more convenient, customers will flock to those types of services. And we've seen that in a variety of industries, everything from an Airbnb that really is able to bring convenience to the, renting a home or a vacation home for a week, all the way through to a variety of other services. And so that was really the benchmark for us of if we can keep this competitive on a price standpoint and deliver the fuel via small trucks, and if we can do so in a more convenient or just a convenient matter that offers choice, that really was the benchmark we were trying to hit. And when we felt like we could do it, that was the moment we decided to dive in.
So Scott, I was curious, it seems like you guys have developed some pretty valuable partnerships as well to help this business model move forward, maybe more so than some of the competitors within this space have. Some of those competitors, let's just call them fast followers because they're no longer around. So, how are these partnerships going to help basically bring your business to the next level? And can convenience stores be a part of that?
Yeah, no, great question and great point there at the end. So, the way we've approached this business from day one is that ultimately there's an infrastructure and a very, very strong one that exists today for customers, for consumers to get gas. We found that going into new markets, we needed partners to help us grow and to help us ultimately understand and be able to service the market better. So there's really two types of partnerships that we focused in on. On the corporate side, we do service fleets and we do a lot of fleet fueling. We found corporate partnerships of corporate fleets that need fuel that help us enter a market. So this helps us go into a market like Washington, D.C. and get our operations up and running, get trucks and drivers on the road, and work out the kinks, make sure everything's working and working smoothly. So that's the first type of partnership that we've really leveraged as a business so far. The second type is consumer partnerships. We look at this business as an augmentation or as supplementary to what exists today. Customers have been going to the gas station for a long, long time, and that habit is very well formed. What we're looking to service ultimately is the situation where a customer maybe can't because of time, maybe can't because of another reason, and being able to be a supplementary feature. So we've had a lot of conversations and discussions with whether it be C-store chains or whether it be much larger consumer aggregators, whether that be the grocery stores or the online e-commerce companies, to say how ultimately can we partner to help service those customers to bring an offering of choice into a market. So when we launch a market, we understand there's a variety of existing choices, and what we're trying to bring is one more choice to the table that a customer might be able to use in the right situation or in the right need.
Chris, when we talk about this stuff, I always think about my own life and my own experiences, and you were kind of nodding your head going, yeah, sometimes that's it. The value of time is critical. I mean, I use Instacart to deliver my groceries. I use Uber Eats and I use Grubhub to bring me food when I'm too lazy or just don't have time to go out and get it, or I've got my daughter, I don't want to load her up in a car seat, drive somewhere and come back because it's a pain in the rear. Is that kind of some of the niche you're trying to hit, Scott?
Yeah, those are all great examples. There's one of the top vehicles that gets registered on the Filled platform on a regular basis is the minivan. You can understand why. You've got a kid in the back seat or multiple. They might be crying on the way home from the errands. That's not the best time. That's not the best experience, and it can be a frustrating one. And so that's a great use case that we see a lot of. Another one might be a power commuter, someone who's already spending an hour on the road a day or 2 hours on the road a day, who figures, if I can save a few minutes here and get home a little bit quicker to my kids, to my family, get into that meeting a little quicker, that's of value. Another demographic we've seen grow in our customer base is elderly. This is something that we kind of dreamed of early on, being a good customer base or a potential customer base, but we knew there was technological limitations. But as we've grown, we've seen that become a stronger and stronger group. And sometimes it's elderly ordering for themselves. Sometimes it's actually kids of elderly ordering for their parents, saying, hey, I want to just take care of this for you. I'm not even in the same city, but I can order this, take care of that. And it's one less thing I have to worry about that you need to do on a weekly basis.
So I will acknowledge my lack of awareness a while ago. We did a Convenience Matters podcast early on in the series on mobile refueling. Didn't have a guest like you on. We just kind of pontificated on our own. It was early on. Didn't know a whole lot about it. And my conclusion on it was a couple things. One, these companies are spouting up trying to deliver fuel. They don't quite know what they're doing. They don't understand the regulatory hurdles, and the regulators haven't paid attention. They're so small that once the regulators pay attention, they're going to shut them down because there's no way, and you're in California, the California Air Resources Board is going to let these guys drive around with these tanker trucks and fill up cars in residential streets. Clearly didn't do the research, didn't understand everything. But when you hear something like that, what's your response? And how do you guys deal with the regulatory world? How do you guys make sure that you're doing things that allow communities to feel comfortable that the role you're going to play in their neighborhoods is going to be a safe and productive one?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And really one of the critical points for Phil as a business from day one, like I mentioned earlier. And Chris, you mentioned partnerships earlier. That word comes to mind when you ask this question, John, because ultimately that's what it is. It's an emerging space and it's new. It's not something that necessarily had been done in terms of consumer last mile fueling before, mobile fueling. And so we treat the regulatory agencies like partners. There's not a approach where we can just say, we're going to go into a market and we're going to launch. We have to work with them. We like to work with them because ultimately, like you mentioned, there's a lot of companies that have popped up and popped out of the space and fell off in the space. And the more that happens, the more we feel like, okay, there's a validated need and a validated customer need, but there's also more and more of a need for there to be good and strong rules about how this should be done safely, The last thing anyone wants getting into this space is a safety incident. And, so we focus in on that with these regulators to say, what are the different areas, whether it be vapor control, whether it be fire risk, whether it be Department of Transportation and transporting hazardous materials. We work with them to say, here's what we would like to do. How would you like to see this done? It looks a little different in every market, and it takes time, right? It's not a process of let's go launch 30, 40 markets in a month. It's not that approach. It's an approach that says, let's try to get the right people in the room, collaborate, show them the need and the demand that customers do ultimately want this. And ultimately, when you show that and when you talk that through with governmental officials or regulators, they understand that and they're willing to work with you on what their constituents and what the public wants, but to do it right and to do it safely. So it's been a lot of conversations from before Filled was even formally incorporated. And we still have those conversations on a weekly basis. We're having conversations with different jurisdictions about current concerns of the operations or about markets we're looking at expanding into and trying to help them better understand the market and the product.
So Scott, I have a question. When we think about the retail fuels market and convenience retailers are always looking, around corners and stuff, electric vehicles have pretty much been a topic now for well over a decade, and you're in a market where there's probably more EVs in California than the rest of the country. So, how can your business model move into that type of space within the alternative, fuels space?
Yeah. So you're right. California is a prime market, and we hear about it a lot more here because it's more adopted and more prevalent here than most of the country at this point. But ultimately, we've particularly called ourselves mobile fueling and mobile fuel delivery company for a long time, and intentionally so. We think that gasoline is the majority. We know that gasoline is the majority of the market, and we think that it's going to be for a while. It's what most folks are driving these days are internal combustion engines. Now, that being said, we know that market trends emerge and grow, and things like Tesla have really increased the desire to drive electric. And so what we've tried to do is say, okay, where is the market going, and how can we make sure Filled can be a part of that? Mobile delivery of energy or of fuel for a car is not specific to gas. It doesn't have to be specific to gas. If hydrogen starts to grow and become a demand like some of the automakers are pushing for, could we service that? Could we do mobile hydrogen fueling? It's possible. Physically, mechanically, it is possible. Making sure it's done safely, et cetera, becomes, the focus and the key there. But same thing with electric, right? So with electric, we've seen a growing trend here, especially in the San Francisco Bay Area, of electric cars. And we've started having conversations. We're not going to go make a battery recharger as a company that's faster than what another company might make. But if we can partner with recharge technologies, battery companies, et cetera, to try to make sure we are in the conversation around a distribution method. One of the great examples I like to give is there's a couple 100,000 gas stations across the U.S. The infrastructure to build out a couple 100,000 or 150,000 electric recharge stations across the U.S. is immense. Yes, they can charge it in their driveway or in their garage likely, but there's still a need for public charging stations as we've seen a lot of these companies start to invest in that space. And what we like to say is, hey, if there's a mobile way to do it, it may be more effective and more efficient, both for the customer and for the delivery of the energy. So we look at it. We're not necessarily doing a lot with it yet because the technology still needs to develop. The battery technology is still improving, but we think it's an opportunity to help usher in an age of cleaner engines. But ultimately, we're still focused and keep our eyes down a little bit on the gasoline market, making sure that the mass of the market isn't getting left behind for the 1% that's moving ahead into the new energy types.
So in the final few minutes we have here, the word disruption is thrown around so haphazardly these days, and I always look at it from the transportation energy side. There's nothing I see on the horizon that's going to disrupt the market. And when I mean disrupt, I mean change it dramatically in a short period of time. It's a long evolution. Clearly, from your VC experience, when you look at an investment opportunity like this and a business opportunity, you're not looking at a 5-year horizon. You're looking down the road. For the convenience retailers who are listening to this and thinking, holy cow, why is NACS bringing to us a company that is a direct competitor and threat to our traditional business model? Are they trying to change the market? Clearly, we want to make sure everybody's aware of what's going on in the market, and there's room for a lot of different players. But from your perspective, what is the long-term growth trajectory of this on-demand fueling? Clearly, you're not going to be replacing the 42 million fuel transactions that are done every day, but I'm assuming you have some sort of idea of what the potential market size might be.
Yeah, no. The reality is we're not going to replace the existing gas stations out on the street today, and we don't think about our business as replacing or getting rid of gas stations. That's not how we think of our business at all. What it really boils down to is choice. Customers are expecting choice. The more technology-enabled services that they use, you mentioned Instacart earlier, the more they want choice. You could name 2 or 3 competitors, I would guess, of Instacart who offer similar services, maybe to different stores, different restaurants, et cetera. And I think that's what mobile fueling is. It's a choice. It's an option for customers in a situation where going physically to a gas station does not make the most sense. From an industry standpoint, there's still going to be a need for the convenience stores where a customer is going to go and buy their whether it be their sodas or their snacks, whatever that is, and get refueled while they're there. It's the most convenient opportunity when you're on your way to work, and that's what you need to do. What Filled is looking to do is augment that with a service and to partner in different markets with different convenience store groups and owners to say, hey, how can we help you guys offer choice to a customer base? Maybe every customer in the zip code that convenience store is servicing isn't stopping at that convenience store because it's not on their ingress-egress route to work, or it's not convenient for them to get to. How can that be something that mobile fueling might be able to service, might be able to partner with a local C-store and ultimately help provide that customer choice? So that's how we think about it. It's hard to know exactly what the market share is because it's still growing, and we're still growing as a business and as an industry. But we do think there's a strong value for choice in customers and in consumers. And we think that helping offer choice to an existing paradigm that's serving, hundreds of millions of Americans, regularly, effectively and efficiently, but helping offer choice in those situations is really the sweet spot of where Filled fits into the equation. It's not a replacement, but it does help offer customers choice.
Well, Scott, we thank you for joining us on Convenience Matters. I think the definition, Chris, of convenience continues to evolve. This is one area where it's continuing to evolve, and appreciate you taking the time with us today, Scott.
John, Chris, really appreciate it, guys. Good talking with you.
All right. Thank you guys for listening to Convenience Matters, and we'll talk to you on the next episode.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.